It started actually when I was 11, and I had a lot of issues at school. I had some fairly significant problems at home, and all of those things not treated meant that I developed extreme depression and anxiety. And again, I didn't deal with any of those things, and in fact it got so bad that I was 11 when I tried to take my own life for the first time. And it wasn't the last time, unfortunately. For me, it actually set a dialogue of what my life would be like. It was my go-to position when stuff got to the point where I actually couldn't cope anymore. And I had these moments where I would get through something and I would just stuff everything down, and I would never, I'd just push it down, and it was gone, and I'd sort of get over it and forget with it, and then something else would happen. And what would happen is that all the other pain that I'd just shoved down would bubble back up again, and I basically made myself like a volcano. And every sort of, it felt like every 10 years or so I'd pop. And what happened is that opened the door to addiction, basically. One day I was offered drugs and I took them, and I was instantly free. Like I still today can actually feel what that felt like when I close my eyes. I'm like, I know what that felt like. And it literally took me, to on a 20-year journey down to rock bottom. And so my first day of recovery was on the 9th of February 2013. And I had one little strip of humanity left, and that was my job. I'd been in that place for like 12 years. I had times when I was quite good at doing stuff, so that's how I managed to maintain, the work. I've been doing it for so long that it was like muscle memory for me. I couldn't do new things, but I could do old things, and luckily lots of the stuff that they had been working on was old stuff. But the reality of it is that I was not even really functional as a human being. I didn't interact with people. I lived in a bedroom, and that was it. I lived with my best mate, though I never spoke to him. And I was trapped in depression and anxiety and the addiction as well, and they just went round and round and round and round and round. I had one moment, which was, I suppose, the start of my recovery, and that was in 2012. And I got to the point where I actually couldn't deal with living life that way anymore. I could not. I tried to stop. I tried to change my life. I tried hypnotism. I tried regulating. I tried everything I possibly could, except dealing with my problems and my baggage and my past. That was too hard to do, and I would never really want to do that. If you asked me, I would say you'd probably drink like me if you had my problems. So anyway, I got to the point where I was like, right, that's it, I'm done. And I tried to take my own life, and it was thank God the last time that I danced with that particular devil. I shouldn't be here today. I don't know. There's no other word for me to describe it in the English language other than a miracle. That is something that shouldn't have happened that did happen. My roommate, best mate, gone away. Was supposed to not even be in Melbourne. Randomly changed his plans and decided to come home just to grab like a pair of shoes or something because he was going to go somewhere else. Happened to come home at the moment when I was almost gone, and managed to pull me back. And from that moment, my recovery sort of started, because I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't want that. I don't want to be there. It took me another 8 months to finally get away from the booze, to realise that was never going to be a way that anyone or I was ever going to solve a problem. In fact, that was like my treadmill. I'd just get on it and run away from everything I possibly could, and I realised that I'd been lying to everyone I ever loved from the majority of my life, like my entire adult life, in fact. And I realised that I actually had to take steps to do something. I didn't know what, and I was lucky enough that I was pointed towards a 12-step program. For me, it was AA. And I learned how, firstly, I saw that you could change. Because for me, my mind, I didn't know how to do anything. All I knew was to frame a life around making sure that I had alcohol in me as much as I possibly could. I had to learn how to interact with human beings again in a social setting. I had to learn how to eat, because my cutlery, I had lost the ability to use cutlery. I couldn't really write with a pen. I used to laugh. I laugh now because I had this sort of reputation of sending people completely garbled emails, because the reality was my fingers weren't typing. My brain thought I was typing right, but my fingers were typing something completely off. But I had help. I had people to sit there and go, this is the way that you do things, and this is the way you need to do things, and this is how you can behave, and here's a framework for behaviour, because I didn't have a framework for behaviour. I'm incredibly selfish. To this day, is one of the hardest things I have to deal with is actually my own self wanting to do everything for me all the time. And through this process of recovery, I learned that there's a process that because for me, it wasn't just, there was anxiety and there was depression, and I needed actually things to deal with those two things as well. Because if I don't deal with those, like I dealt with my trauma of my past and all the disgraceful things I did to the people that I loved, dealt with that, and I've come to peace with that. But I realised that in the background, my depression and anxiety is like, it's doing push-ups, waiting for me to be weak, waiting for me not to do the things that I need to do. And it's only recently that I've realised that actually I do a lot of things, and the things that I do could actually just be picked up and given to anyone to do. It doesn't matter whether you have depression or anxiety. Maybe you just feel like you're a bit lost, or maybe you just feel like your life needs a little bit of direction. And I sat down and went, okay, well, what are these things? And I should probably also say that before I get into those things, I had a second rock bottom I've had a rock bottom in my sobriety. I didn't think I could ever have one. I thought it wasn't as low as my rock bottom that led me to my sobriety, but it was actually 3 years ago. I was still a pack-a-day smoker. I was 90-something kilos because I was just eating ridiculously because I wasn't dealing with certain things very well. And I just was like, I can't deal with this anymore. I don't want to be... I'd always been in my mind, I was like a super fit guy. I've always been a super fit guy. And that's when my wife introduced me to swimming. And what I didn't realise then was that actually what I had found was something connected to me to one of the only little happy places I had as a kid. And something that I absolutely love doing. And 3 years later, I'm now what's called an ultra-marathon swimmer. So that's someone who swims 25 kilometres or more in one go. You do stop so you can eat and drink, and not to get run over by ships sometimes. But for me, I just sit there and go, well, I got to a point where I had a crucible moment in my life again, and I went, I have to change. And what do I change? And how do I go about doing that? And so what I did was I went, okay, well, what's wrong? What's happening? I've got all of this chaos in my life. We had our first child, and I didn't know what the hell was going on. I started a new job that was way out of my league and like stretched me to everything. It allowed my anxiety to come in. My anxiety is attached to fear. I don't really know anyone whose anxiety isn't attached to some type of fear. For me, it's always the talk that's saying you're not good enough. This is going to be taken away if you drop the ball on this. All the world's going to end type scenario. And I realised that all of these things, this chaotic thought, they needed to have process, and they needed to be ordered, and they needed to basically be brought into play. I realised that the depression that I had was because I always felt like I was hopeless and I had nothing to work towards. Because I have this swimming in my life these days, it's something that I do for myself, and I've realised that actually, if I didn't have that, if I took that out of my life today, what would my life be about? What do I do for me? And the answer would actually probably be nothing. And now that doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make me feel good at all. So the first thing that I did was I sat down and went, okay, I need to make my life, I need to have things that I can bank on in my life. And for me, it's a very consistent routine. I get up at the same time. I go to bed pretty much at the same time. And I try to do pretty much the same thing. Buses are a bit of a nightmare when they don't turn up on time, and trains. At the very early days, they sent me nuts. But what I've found in having a consistent routine is that you can rely on it. When your life is all over the place, like I've worked with a lot of guys, and it's like, okay, what's going on? Where you've got all these things happening, all this pressure, all these unknowns happening. What can you rely on? And if the answer is nothing, well, the first thing is, well, you need to rely on getting up at the same time and getting our breakfast into you at the same time and doing something for yourself before you start your day. Having something that gives you purpose, for me, outside of work, life, pleasure, it doesn't have to be anything special. It doesn't have to be ultra-marathon swimming. You don't have to go and do silly things like that. But it has to be something for you. When I first got sober, I went through this, I decided that I wanted life. Like, I denied myself life for so long, I didn't really know what it was about. So I went off and I did ballroom dancing, ridiculous thing for me to do. I've got about 7 left feet. And being a single guy in a place like that, I'm not very good with that type of environment. I'm very, very nervous, and it wasn't great. I didn't like it, but I gave it a try. I decided to get back into martial arts again because I loved doing that as a kid. The problem was that my brain thought that I was 18 again, and my body remembered that I was 39. And so I remember I was at this class, and the guy goes, "Do a forward roll," and I'm like, okay, and I just throw myself over, and then I get up and I go, my arm's supposed to be hanging off like this, and I dislocated my shoulder because my brain thought it was just bad. I'm like, alright, that's not good. And I went through and I tried lots and lots of different things. So if you sit there and you go, well, I'm looking for something to give me purpose, the first thing I would recommend is go back to the basics, like the time in your life when you wanted to do something that you did as a kid, or that maybe you weren't allowed to do it. I wanted to swim in the Olympics, but my parents wouldn't allow me to. They didn't want to take me to swimming training at 4 o'clock in the morning. Understandable. I'm not sure if my kids want to. Actually, no. If my kids want to do that, I'll just stick them in the car with me when I go. So I'll be good with that. But finding yourself something that's for you, and it has to be something that you commit to yourself to being like non-negotiable. So I get up, like I've got, my kids are 3 and 4. They're chaos incarnate. You would know, you have young grandchildren as well. And so getting up at 4 to get into the pool at 5 is a gift for me. No one's up I worked out that no one gets up at that time. My wife was no way she's ever out of bed. So I'm like, bang, I'm home, everyone's awake. I come back from swimming, it's like, hey, dad duty on. I go to work. But nothing will ever get in the way. I don't do it at lunchtime because work gets in the way. It only takes one phone call for me not to go to the pool at lunchtime. The other thing is goals. So if I a lot of people that I've spoken to, I sit down and say, okay, well, what do you want for yourself? What are you doing? And more often than not, it's, well, I want to get this promotion, or I want to do this, or I want to get the house, or I want to get, it's about something, which can be okay, but it's not something that necessarily sits outside. Again, it's something for someone else. And that goal, and having something to work for that's not, again, it's something for you, that sits there, you put it in front and you go, okay. It doesn't have to be a massive goal. Problem with big goals are they take a long time to do. Next year I've got the English Channel. I'm looking to swim the English Channel. And I've got to train huge amounts to get there. And sometimes I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to do it. The only way I do is I go, okay, I'm going to just break all of that goals down to little weekly goals. This week I have to swim 20k, next week I'm going to swim 25, I'm going to try and do it at this speed, I'm going to try and do all of these things. But all of those goals keep me going. They give me this thing that goes, tick, I've achieved something. I feel great when I've achieved something. There's something I can measure about my life. Like the hardest bit about recovery is that I didn't see the change in myself. And if you can't see the change in yourself, then if you're like me, you don't believe it happens. It's not happening. It's not until someone goes, oh my God, you look amazing. Or they give you some type of feedback that you realise that actually the result of all that hard work has come in. So you need to have something that you can measure and that you can put together yourself, or I should say. Probably the most important though in this is connections to people. Like real connections. Facebook is not a connection to people. LinkedIn is not a... Well, I met this man on LinkedIn and I feel quite connected to him, but you need to be a part of a community. Something that's a little bit... I need to be bigger than yourself. Like I don't go to AA anymore. If I ever got into trouble, I absolutely leave straight back in those doors. I've found though a community of open water swimmers, and in that exercise and going out there and being in the middle of Port Phillip Bay and sometimes wondering whether or not swimming through swarms of jellyfish is a good idea or not, or when a boat comes up to you and goes, hey, by the way, we've just seen a shark down there, and then drives off. Whether or not you're doing something good or something a little bit crazy, but those people know. If I'm not there on Saturday morning, someone's like, where are you, man? What's going on? And when we help each other, and when we're out in the water, our lives depend on each other, and there's something incredible about that experience and having that connection. When I was at my worst, and then when I do have my moments, and I do have my moments today, I pull myself away from everything and everyone, and I systematically unplug all of those connections. Slowly. Most of the time, I get about 2, and then someone else has already gone, what are you doing? And pulls me back in. But the reality is that if I don't have those things, then in a very short time frame, I'm going to be where I was before. I know this here. This is probably going to sound a little bit crazy, but having a connection to and doing stuff outside, like I spent the majority of my adult life inside. I spent the majority of my childhood on a lake, swimming, jumping off things I probably shouldn't have jumped off. And I strongly believe that having a lot of nature in my life, being out, whether it be walking with my kids, being outside. I'm outside as much as humanly possible these days, whether I'm swimming or not. And I feel a complete change if I'm restricted from that. And I don't mind whether it's walking through the rain in winter, it doesn't matter. There's something that becomes quite invigorating. I don't know whether for me it's actually quite humbling sometimes. But I like to sit there and say that if you sit there and go, well, what's going on in my life? Well, where am I doing it? Am I actually doing something? Like, when was the last time I actually just sat outside in the sun and enjoyed myself with the right factor sun medication on? I think I had a moment about last year. I got made redundant, and it was the scariest thing to happen to me in a long time. My second son was about 18 months old. We just bought a house. I'm the sole breadwinner in our house. I work in a very small industry. I'm literally now working at the last place in this country I could possibly work. And that was a luck, that job, that I ended up getting that job. And I sat there and I was like, we're in big trouble. We're in big trouble. If I don't pour a genie out of the bottle now, everything's gone. And so I retreated a little bit. In fact, the wheels fell off quite a lot in that time. It was the first time that the "you shouldn't be here" person started talking in my ears for the first time. Luckily enough, I went, that's not good. And I spoke to my wife, and after she recovered from being told some pretty uncomfortable news, we worked out what to do. The point that what I was leading to was what I had started to do as well was to start to get into this world of online stuff. I spent a lot of time on Facebook. I spent a lot of time looking at news, commenting on news, getting into arguments with people that I didn't know about stuff that really didn't matter. It didn't really matter to me. And I realised that actually I would wake up in the morning, grab my phone, check to see if I'd got anything through that I needed to get through, and then I got straight into social media. Now today, I realised a little while ago that I do the same for work now. I get up and check my email straight away. I'm not anymore. Because I would see something, and if it annoyed me, if I didn't get the response that I needed from my colleagues overseas overnight, I would instantly be angry for the rest of the day. And when I interacted with social media, I would instantly be angry. My entire mood for the rest of the day was based on whatever I saw in that moment, in that time. And I went, I can't do that. I don't want to be angry. What does it actually matter? What some guy sitting in his computer in Toowoomba cares about something? It doesn't. I can't change his opinion. I'm never going to change his opinion, so I just went, no. None of that for me now. I engage with people that have shared opinions, but very little. Only on LinkedIn, which is a commercial platform rather than anything else. So what I do is I try to give myself, 5 minutes of no tech time outside of everything else in every single day, just so that I can not be. It's good with kids because I can sit down and play with cars and stuff. I think I wanted to sit down and the last thing I just wanted to say is that to give you, I suppose, as a bit of a tool. I've been thinking on. I started a fledgling men's support group where it's just guys who get down and we try to work through a lot of this stuff. And what I did was, it's like, okay, get a calendar and go home, get a calendar. When you get home, get a calendar, get out a calendar, one of those 9 to 5 things, and just sit there and go, okay, from the time you get up to the time you go to bed, put down everything that you do and just score it. 1 point for you, 0 for others. And if you don't have a very high score, Like, have a look at it. If there's not many ones on that list, then it's probably a good idea. And you're feeling a bit average. You feel like, actually, I want things to change, but I'm not quite sure where to go. Then start with taking a look at what you can do for yourself. Because there's a reason why, when you're on an aircraft, they say put the mask on yourself. Fix yourself first, and then help others. Start with yourself. Start with putting a routine in place. Start with doing something for yourself and setting up some goals. Whether it be going on a holiday or doing something amazing like that. Whatever it is. I can't tell you what that will be, but you'll know when you find it. Try anything as well. Like try ballroom dancing. Definitely don't try martial arts if you can't do forward rolls, because it's not good for your shoulder. Look at who you're connected to and why, and look at who you should disconnect from and what you should disconnect from and why. And if you're really still in a bit of trouble, then do what I did and stick your hand up and ask for some help, because that's the only way you're going to get out of it.